A very big hello to all my dear friends at this virtual platform learning on YouTube at your own channel Lit E City. Okay, friends, this time I have come up with something very important from NET point of view. Okay, this time I have brought you some very important poems. This series will try to cover all the important poems, though I must say that all the important is such a big claim that I do not know whether I would be able to do it justice or not, but I will try to cover almost all the major poems of 20th century. We all know very well that in a NET paper how questions are asked from various new writers, and obviously we don't have ideas about these writers. So my attempt will be to cover these poems. I will try to tell you something about the theme, the subject matter, something special about these poems. So this is the first lesson of this series of important poems of 20th century, and I hope you will enjoy these lessons. In this lesson we will cover 4 poems by these poets that include Seamus Heaney, Edward Thomas, Jackie Kay, and Thomas Hardy. Friends, the criteria for my selection is obviously alphabetical order of the poems. Okay, without wasting any more time, let's come to our first poem of this particular lesson, that is Act of Union, and it was composed in 1975. The poet here is Seamus Heaney. Seamus Heaney is a famous modern Irish poet, and this poem is one of the most controversial poems from Heaney's 1975 volume North. It is the name of a poetic collection from which this poem Act of Union is taken. The poem basically consists of 2 sonnets, and the choice of this form is quite ironic because traditionally sonnet is associated with tender feeling of love, whether it is Shakespearean sonnets, Spenserian sonnets. Sometimes it has some divine connotations also, like sonnets of Milton and Hopkins. But in this particular sonnet, the poem is not about love, but rather the symbolic rape of a weaker nation, that is Ireland, by an imperial power, that is Britain. So the whole sonnet, these 2 sonnets presents from Britain point of view a kind of rape by this dominant nation of the weaker nation, Ireland. Okay, Ireland is personified as a female with a bosom like heaving province and a vagina like gash. This weaker nation is raped by the battering ram of the imperially male Britain. You can look, all these words are taken from the poem, and you can look at the sexist imagery used by Seamus Heaney to point out that how this particularly heinous act is committed by Britain. Like a typical male manner, this imperial power has forced itself upon the weaker nation. The British rape of Ireland has led to a sort of monstrous birth, and even the imagination goes on, and Heaney points out that out of this rape is born the partitioned, paramilitary, dominated, half-independent Ireland. This Ireland, the modern Ireland, is the outcome of this brutal rape by an imperial power. However, the speaker can see no treaty that will solve completely, that will heal, that will cover up the wounds caused to irrevocably damaged Ireland. These wounds, which was caused by British outrage, they are irrevocable, they can never be healed. While Heaney describes Ireland with feminine features, he uses dominating masculine descriptions to describe Britain. I am the tall kingdom over your shoulder that you would neither cajole nor ignore. So just like a typical dominating male, in fact, in the poem also, in the sonnet also, the geographical feature of Britain and Ireland are presented in this manner, as if Ireland is lying backward towards England, and England or Britain is trying to impose itself on Ireland. Although Heaney wrote Act of Union from the point of view of Britain, he illustrates the nation as a dominating sexual being which forces Ireland into something she never wanted. One thing I would like to say that a poem does not present a nonchalant British point of view. There is a sense of regret in Britain also of the crime it has done over Ireland. So this was the first poem, my dear friends. I must tell you that Seamus Heaney is very important poet from our examination point of view, and you should also learn more about him. Moving towards our next poem, that is Adlestrop, which was written in 1915, and the poet is Edward Thomas. Edward Thomas is considered one of those young doomed poets of the war generation who wrote poetry, war poetry, and which become quite popular at that time. You can see the period 1915, it is almost the eve or the beginning of the First World War. This poem, Adlestrop, is Edward Thomas' most famous and anthologized poem. You can find this poem in many collections of modern verse or 20th century poetry or war poetry or young poetry. The title Adlestrop, it refers to the name of a small village in the country of Gloucestershire, and the speaker describes an unexpected stop at its station by the express train on which he is a passenger. Now so this poem is basically a kind of descriptive poem, and the description is based on the real experience of the poet himself. The poet, while he was visiting a place, this express train has basically a stop, unexpected, because it is not a station, but when he sees the natural scenery and the background of that place, the ideas came to his mind. Like Rupert Brooke. Now, Rupert Brooke is another one such poet who has written during this time of turmoil when the world war was looming large. The Old Vicarage, Grantchester. This is another descriptive poem which presents the idyllic beauty of rural scenery of England. Adlestrop also describes the England of sunny innocence. Now, this sunny innocence, it lasted for a very little time at that time, because after 1915 the war became more and more widespread into the whole Europe, and obviously many lives were lost before August 1914, when the First World War would change everything. These are the first four opening lines of this short poem. Yes, I remember Adlestrop, the name, because one afternoon of heat, the express train drew up there unwantedly. It was late June. So very basic, simple way of describing things, and all nostalgic kind of feeling comes from this poem. It has become popular in anthologies because of its reference to a peaceful time and place, only a short time before the outbreak of the First World War. So now you can get the idea why this poem becomes so much popular. And there is one tragic, ironical thing also attached to this poem, that Thomas enlisted the following year and was killed in 17, a young man when he died just before the poem was due to be printed in his collection poems. So this is kind of a tragic fate happening with this poem, that before it was formally printed, Edward Thomas himself died in war as a casualty of war. Okay, moving ahead, we have a very important modern poem, The Adoption Paper, which was composed, which was written in 1991, and the writer of this particular series of poem is Jackie Kay. Now, The Adoption Papers is a series of poems. Please remember, it is not a single poem, it is a series of poems based on her own experience of interracial adoption. This is the key theme, this is the key idea about this poem, The Adoption Papers. Now, who is Jackie Kay? Now, Jackie Kay was born in Edinburgh, Scotland in 1961. She was child of black parents and a black child, as she was adopted by white working socialist parents. So it is interracial adoption. She was by birth a black, and then she was adopted by white working class socialist parent, and then she was brought up in Glasgow, that is Scotland. So she is basically a Scottish poet. Now, these poems, the Adoption Papers poems, they were written between 80s and 90s, and the whole piece was performed on BBC Radio 3 in 1990 as part of the BBC's Drama Now series. It is basically a series of BBC, and this whole was enacted, this poem was enacted in this series. Okay, what is in the poem? It is told from three narrative perspectives. First is that of the daughter, then adoptive mother, and then birth mother. So three women share their experiences regarding this adoption and all this complicated thing. It identifies each voice in the text by a different typeface. Okay, typeface, or you can say font. So for each voice there is a different font, so that we can distinguish who is speaking. In the opening three stanza sequence, the adoptive mother speaks directly and reminiscently. I always wanted to give birth. You can see the pain, the poignancy of a mother, of a woman who is not able to give birth biologically. Her 12-line stanza recalls the pressure to, this is important, the pressure, the social, the peer pressure to do that incredible natural thing that women do. And also her sense of failure at being unable to conceive. This is considered one of the greatest curse of womanhood, if a woman is not able to conceive, and her pain, her poignancy, her all this sense of frustration is presented in these first section. The third 6-line stanza charts the brief tone of the birth mother imagining her unknown daughter. Now, she has given the birth, but she doesn't know where her daughter is. She is 26 today. My hair is grey, because the daughter is not with her. She has given the birth, but she is not able to see her child grow up. So she is just imagining, she is 26 today. My hair is grey. Look at the way of measuring her age. Uniting these two stanzas, first is that the first stanza is from the point of view of adoptive mother, third stanza is from the point of view of the biological mother, and these two stanzas are united by the voice of the black daughter, and she is obviously caught between an adoptive mother whom she loves, and a birth mother she longs to know, both of whom are white, and she is a black one. The adoptive mother knows, I am not a mother until I have signed that piece of paper. That is why this formal piece of paper is what makes her claim as a mother. It seems that it is the document, after all, that makes her the real mammy. So it's a very complicated poem in which all kind of issues of race, identity, issues of of formalities of adoption, all these are tackled very sensitively by Jackie Kay. Okay, moving forward. Okay, it's too much heavy stuff. Let's have some light poems also, and I am going to talk about a very interesting light mannered poem. Are you digging on my grave? 1913, and the poet here is Thomas Hardy. Now, we all know Hardy as a great novelist, the heavyweight Victorian novelist who presented a pessimistic view of life. But we all also know, or we should know, that after a phase of his life, he turned to poetry and proved to be a very good poet also. And it is a very light-hearted poem, written in quite a interesting manner. So it was first published in the Saturday Review on September 27, 1913, and it was included in Thomas Hardy's 1914 volume of poetry, Satires of Circumstances. This is the name of a collection of poems by Thomas Hardy. The poem presents a dialogue between a deceased woman in her grave and another speaker who is not identified until the fourth of the poem's 6 stanzas, the one who is above digging on the woman's grave. So it's a dialogue between the woman who is already dead, who is in her grave, and someone who is digging the grave. Now, the first 3 stanzas are about the guess. The woman first guesses the digger must be her lover, planting rue, feeling sad, but is told by the digger that her lover believed he no longer had to be true to the woman now that she is dead and married a woman of wealth. So it is first disappointment for the woman who thinks that her lover has come and is feeling sad in her absence, but she is disappointed to know that no, he has already married another woman. The woman next guesses the digger must be her nearest, dearest kin, family members, and even if not kin, then finally her enemy, but learns neither her kin nor her enemy believes there is any use to visit or cares enough to visit the grave. So once again, more disappointment for this dead woman. Now, giving up on her guessing, now she can't guess anymore that who may be then digging the grave. Women in the first 2 lines of the 4th stanza asks, who is digging on my grave? This is the question in the title of the poem, and in the remaining lines of the stanza, the digger identifies himself as her little dog. So it is her dog who is digging the grave, but still something left. In the 5th stanza, the woman expresses her gratitude that at least her dog proves to one true heart and remains faithful to her, and praises dog's fidelity as having no equal among humankind. She thanks that at least dog has her memories intact and has come to pay the tribute. But the dog explains in the last stanza that he dug on the woman's grave merely to bury a bone and had quite forget it was your resting place. So finally, Hardy shows that nobody pay care to a dead person. Everybody gets involved into the business of life. So this rather cruel message in a light-hearted manner is presented by Hardy. So that's all for the first episode of this series, a 20 important poem of 20th century. I will soon come back with the part 2nd of this series, and we will learn about some more poems. I would appreciate if you tell me what are the points which you take from this lesson, what are some questions or doubts that are created by this lesson, and what are your very important suggestions to make these lessons more beneficial. I will be waiting for them. Thank you, my friends.